Hi, how would you like to design your own tote bag? Today's project, I'm not going to give you a pattern, but I'm going to give you some guidelines so that you can design your own tote bag. It's a lot of fun. It's hard work, but it's very satisfying because you'll see that it's your own creation and there's none other like it. So what we need to do first of all is figure out, let me show you. This is the first one that I came up with. And so what we need is a fabric that I generally stick with florals, a fabric where the flowers are distinct enough from each other that you can cut around them. And so this poppy fabric I have used a great deal. You can cut out individual poppies. They aren't all smushed together. You don't want something that's too small, and you don't generally want something that's too big, although I found this fabric and fell in love with it. So I plan to make a bag using this design, but I won't put any of that fabric on the bottom. I'll just put it on the bag itself, like I did with this one right here. Okay, I like the pink, I think they're poppies. I like that a lot. And so I just put it on the bag, but I didn't have the fabric on the bottom. Generally, I have a focus fabric at the bottom, and then something in the middle, and then something else on top. So I'm looking forward to see what this is going to turn out like. Here's another fabric that works really well, these leaves, and because they're distinct enough from each other that we can cut them out. You don't want something that's really, really fussy. And I actually finished this bag just today. And so this is what happened with this one. I do a little something different from the front and back, just for variety. And here's another one that works well. But I'll have to tell you that if you look closely, it gets pretty complicated when you get to those stems and leaves. So what you do in a case like that is that you cut around the whole thing. Don't try to cut every individual little leaf and every tiny stem, or it'll drive you crazy. So there's that. Here's another one that I have used, the sunflowers. This was challenging because, again, the small stems and so on. But if you use this same technique that I just showed you by cutting in a general design around it, that works well. I'll have to tell you right from the beginning that this is not easy. It's fun, it's very satisfying, but it's not easy. You need to be able to do free motion quilting. But I'd like to challenge you to try it. You might just find a new hobby. Now, my very favorite one is this one right here. This is what we're going to work on today. I like the fact that we've got blue and purple flowers. I like the fact that they're large enough that you can easily cut around them. I like the dragonfly that's in the fabric. And so this is going to be our project that we're going to work on today. Now, what you need is a foundation piece, and I usually make them 20 inches wide, 18 inches deep. Okay, and so I have a piece here that I have cut that's going to be, I just want to cut it a little larger than my background foundation piece. So here's this fabric. Then I have a middle fabric that I'm going to use. And I really like this because it's got the blue and the lavender. So I'm going to put that in the middle, and I'm going to put this on top. And then I have a piece of black fabric that I'm going to put at the top here. All right, now I have a piece of soap, and I am simply going to go from here to there and have some kind of shape. And the nice thing about soap is that if you don't like it, you can use a wet washcloth and wipe it off and try again. So I'm just going to go like this. That works okay. And I wanted to make sure that underneath I have the fabric that's going to cover it. Now I'm going to cut this right on the line. We're going to embellish later on with trims, strips, and little prairie points, triangles, whatever you want. And so that we're going to do that later. All right, now at the top, I want another line. I need to make sure that it's not above where my fabric is, but that it's right here. Okay, I've got plenty of room. And so I'm just going to go like this. Yeah, that looks good. And then I'm going to cut this one out as well. Now I want to sew these together just by using a narrow zigzag across there. But I don't want to pin it to the background because I don't want to sew it to the background. So I'm going to use Scotch tape to hold it together. And then I'm going to use black thread on my sewing machine and a narrow zigzag and simply sew these pieces together, and then we'll go on to the next step. You'll do the same thing for the front and the back. Now I'm going to place it on the border. Actually, you know what? This extra here, I'm going to cut away. Because we don't need that extra underneath there. And let's see, on this side, I have some that I can cut away as well. Now I'm going to center it on the 16 by 20 piece, and I have some leeway because I've got that much space at the bottom. So do I want to have it like this? It's too much black. So we'll move this up. I've got this, didn't quite catch. Move this up, and let's see how that works on the other end. It'll be like that, so it'll be approximately like that. I like that. I like that. That'll work great. So what I'm going to do now is to, this time I will pin it because we're going to pin it onto the foundation. Then I'm going to, from the back, sew zigzag all the way around and trim off those edges. I have sewn around and I have trimmed the edges. Now the next question is, do you want the front to match the back? On this one, it didn't exactly match. These two did, the others didn't. This one, yeah, I tried to get to match. That turned out pretty good. On this one, I tried to get it to match. It wasn't perfect. And on the other side, yeah, it wasn't that great. I'm gonna show you how to do it, but I wanna tell you that it doesn't really matter. If the front, the seams here don't match the back, it doesn't matter, okay? So I don't want you to get all upset about it. However, because there are those of you who do care about things like that, we'll show you how to do it. I'm gonna lay this one on top of my other 16 by 20 inch foundation piece, and I'm going to cut a slit right here. I don't really want to cut the top, but I'll cut the bottom. I'm going to cut a slit right where that seam is, okay? Now the key though is to remember that you need to reverse it so that you can, this will be the back of the tote bag, okay? So now from this perspective, we can put the other middle, bottom, and top on, connect these, and do whatever you want in the middle. Let me show you what I mean. I have layered the bottom, the middle, and the top. Now I'm going to peek underneath to see where those seams are, and this is where one of them is. Okay, and I have extra on the side so I can slash in there a little bit. And here's the other one, and so it's right here. That means I have to bring this black down a little further. Okay, and on the other side, where's my slit? Right here. And where's my other slit? Right here. Okay, so now all I need to do is draw the line from this point to this point and do whatever I want to do in the middle. Okay, and don't forget, it's just soap. So if you don't like it, you can change it. Okay, so there you go. There's that line. And then over here, I've got this line, and let's go up and out. That doesn't have too much of a curve in it, which is fine. So I'm going to go back and do what we did before. Cut these lines, Scotch tape them onto the fabric, and zigzag them and put them on the foundation, and then we'd be ready for the next part. So here I have one of the sides, and now is where the fun begins, because now we begin to embellish this side of the tote bag. Now there are a number of things I use to embellish, and one of them is 1.5 inch strips cut on the bias and iron pressed like this lengthwise. They will become the, what do you call it, border around places like this. I have some lime green that I was kind of surprised, but I think that looks pretty neat. I have black and white. I really like this thin stripe because it makes just a really nice trim here. Okay, so that's the kind of thing I use, is those trims. Then I have a whole bunch of prairie points, and I usually make a lot of them so that I can, in different sizes, so that I can experiment and see where I'd like to have some prairie points. The main thing though that we need is we're going to use a technique called rotary purse. We're going to add flowers here, like this one right here has been cut in half. So I used Wonder Under right here. I cut it into squares about this size because I figured most flowers in this fabric would fit inside a square this size. So I cut a bunch of squares, and then I looked on my fabric to see what I needed, which flowers I needed to put where. Now this one isn't, I don't think it's exactly the same flower. The points don't quite match, but that's okay, doesn't matter. I don't really want the points to match, because then I have to make sure that it matches everywhere, but this way it'll work fine. I also cut out a dragonfly. I did not cut out the antenna. I'll use that with my sewing machine. I'll put the antenna on with my sewing machine. We might put that up there in the black area. I have right here, this dragonfly got its wings cut off, so I'm going to put the wings there. And I'm going to add this flower right here, because it was also cut. So I'm going to add this flower. This method is called broderie purse, and it's just a fun thing to do. And this flower, I think, will bow somewhere like that. Yeah. Now, when you look at this fabric, you have all these holes, and I've only done one side yet. I had hoped that with 1 yard of fabric, I would have enough to do 2 tote bags. I'm going to have to get at least another ½ yard, if not more, because you do have to pick and choose. And you know what? I don't like to think of it as waste. I'm already thinking of what I can do with all these fabrics, all these pieces. And so it's just fuel for future projects. It's not waste, okay? So I'm going to remove these flowers now and figure out what am I going to use down here. I'd kind of like to use this right here. Let's see how that works. And then up here, I think maybe the dark blue will work. And then these little prairie points. Let me do a little figuring out what's gonna work, and I'll be back with you. Okay, I came up with a plan. I have this here. Now what I did is I lined it up right by the seam, and I sewed a straight stitch right along the edge. Then I ironed it this direction. This is why you need to put it on those strips on the bias so that they will curve. So I ironed it down this way, and after I add the prairie points, I can sew that down. Down here, I decided to go with the black and white rather than the green, because it kind of ties in that black and white down here. And when I got to the end, it wasn't quite long enough. Nothing like planning ahead, right? But I also realized that I was going to use this flower in this position, so I didn't need that spot. So I just took that out and scooted it down. And so now, before I sew that down, let me just get these things positioned again so that I have a feel of where things are going to go. This goes down here. The butterfly or the dragonfly wings go there, and I thought I needed a leaf. So I found a leaf, and I'm going to add it there. Okay, and then I decided that for my prairie points, I am going to use 3 different prairie points, 3 different lavenders. So I will put, and I also zigzagged right close to the edge so that they hold together. So I'm going to pin those in place. I'm going to overlap them a bit. I'm going to pin them in place so that when I sew on top this strip, it'll secure them. And then I have one down here that I want to put on this side. There we go. And put that there. I have the butterfly wings, and then I think I'm done. So I'm going to take these flowers off again, pin these in place, And then I'm going to go sew these 2 strips down. I'm ready to fuse these flowers into place. Now this product I use, I think was called Wonder Under. There's also Steam a Seam too. But when you work with this, one side is rough, the other is smooth. The rough side is what you press onto your fabric. Wrong side, obviously. And then now we take this, and in order to get that other coating off of there, you use a pin to get it started, and then you peel off this layer right there and position it in place and press it down with a dry iron. Okay, there's one tad little and I'm just gonna cut it off. It's just too skinny to mess with. So I've got that. And now I'm going to do the same with these other flowers. I'm going to fuse them into place. Then I'm going to work on the other side of this tote bag. And when I'm done with that, I'll tell you what's next. I've arranged the other side of the tote bag. There are a couple things I want to point out. One of them is that when I put this flower right here, there's this little purple wedge that is from an adjacent flower. I couldn't very well just cut around it, so I cut a leaf, and I'm simply going to put a leaf there and cover that up, okay? The technique I'm going to use now is raw edge applique. We have fused all of these leaves and flowers and dragonflies in place, and I'm simply going to start with the purple color and go right along the edge, and you need to use your walking foot, lower your feed dog, and just go right along the edge of the flower. Okay, it's not perfect, but it'll work. I'm going to do all of the purple flowers. I guess I only have one on each side. Then I'll switch colors. After I finished that raw edge applique, I sewed the floor of the tote bag onto the bottom, and that is a piece that's 20 inches by 5 inches. So that is there. And then also I cut a piece of lightweight batting, and I have fused the top, this is the 2 sides and the bottom, onto that piece of batting. And now I'm going to do free motion quilting, just meandering stitch, something simple. I'm going to use blue thread for parts of it, black thread for the rest of it. Okay, now to finish the tote bag, I'm going to refer you to a tutorial I did called Log Cabin Tote Bag Part 2, and that will show you how you finish this off into a tote bag. Okay, it has been several weeks, and now I want to show you what I've come up with and some lessons that I've learned along the way. This one, you recall, all these delightful little flowers. I originally was going to use more of this pink fabric and decided I would just use that for an accent. And then, do you remember the one that I was showing you with the sunflowers? I decided not to use the yellow that I had originally planned in the center, because the sunflowers didn't show up, and I used black instead and just used the yellow for accents. And I ended up putting that on there. It was from a previous project that I had. So I was pretty happy with that. That was fun. And then this one right here. And this was different because I did not use any of this fabric on the bottom as my focus fabric. I simply cut out the large piece and used applique to put that on there. I learned something while I was doing this. My prairie points were going the opposite direction, and I learned that if I cut out just a bit of a curve, then when I put them in this position, I have less problem with the point sticking out. And so that works sometimes if you want to make sure you get those points in there. Just cut a little bit off on the curve. And then because the outside has so much brown, I added more orange on the inside and even put a little doohickey right there on the pocket. So that was fun. And then the one that my favorite, this one that we started out with, I really, really like this. This was a lot of fun and I enjoyed it. The dragonfly stood out quite nicely, and I just used a satin stitch to make those antennae. Now, one thing I learned here, and that is that when you lay out your design, walk away from it. Come back in an hour, maybe even just the next day. Because I originally had this piece there, and as I looked at it, I thought, nah, it didn't work. So I ended up unsewing that seam and just putting another prairie point on top of that. And then I liked it much better. So walk away from it, come back later. Also, when you put this trim on, when you sew the trim on, don't use too small a stitch. Make it big enough so that if you decide you're going to add something that you hadn't originally planned on, that you can unsew that part and slip the prairie point in or whatever it is you have. So don't use too fine a stitch, okay? And now some people are going to say, oh goodness, it's much easier just to get a pattern and follow a pattern, and that's true. But it is true. But the thing about it is there's nothing quite so satisfying as coming up with your own pattern. And so I recommend that you try it, because when you get those creative juices flowing, you'll get new ideas and it'll be a lot of fun. So, and I have confidence that there are those of you out there who are going to do a much better job than I did. Anyway, until next time, take care.